Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. We are in Daniel chapter 3. We've been in Daniel the last couple of weeks, and we started off with Daniel and his friends purposing to do what was right when it came to eating the king's meat, and they didn't want to defile themselves. Then last week we talked about Daniel's ability to interpret a dream because God gave him the wisdom, and Daniel's friends prayed and asked God to help in this circumstance. We've talked about the importance of obedience, even when things aren't going our way. Well, boys and girls, things are really about to not go the way of the three men. In chapter 3, verse number 1, it says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar, boys and girls, in just the last chapter had recognized God and his power, and now he's out making an image, an idol. Well, he gathers all of the rulers of his court, all of the people with authority, and he says, let's go dedicate this statue. And so he takes them out to the plain of Dura. He has them all there. Daniel is not there, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are there. So they're there, and they're being told, a herald kind of whistles or blows his horn and tells them that when you hear the music play, and he lists several different instruments, when this music plays, when you hear these instruments, you're to bow down to this statue. Well, the music plays and everyone bows down. Well, not everyone. There are 3 men who are still standing. And those 3 men, I'm sure you know who the 3 are. Anyways, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, not you. Sorry, Peter. You weren't there. You got spared this one. All right, so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are still standing, but everyone else bowed down. Boys and girls, can you imagine still standing up tall? I know one teacher told at one time, they're like, they could have just pretended to tie their shoe or something. We would have been tempted to do that, wouldn't we, boys and girls? Oh, yeah, see that 4-leaf clover? Look like you're bowing, but not really bow. Or, maybe Peter sees some bamboo down there. But they didn't even pretend. They stood tall. Boys and girls, they stood for what was right, and they wouldn't bow. Well, there were some people who were a little jealous of them, the Chaldeans, and they went to Nebuchadnezzar, and they're like, those Jews, those, and they start to speak bad of them, and they say, they didn't bow. Well, Nebuchadnezzar gets angry again. Clearly, he does have a temper. He gets angry again, and he says, bring them to me. Well, boys and girls, when the herald had first given the command, he had also given the punishment. If they didn't bow, they were to be thrown into the fiery furnace. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, he basically kind of, maybe they didn't understand. Maybe they didn't know what they were supposed to do. In verses 14 and 15, King Nebuchadnezzar confronts or talks to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He says, Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, and he goes on and he explains the directions again. You hear the music, you bow down. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer him, starting in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. In other words, we don't take it lightly, okay? If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So they are bold in their response to the king. They say, we know our God can deliver us, but if not, that's okay. In other words, you couldn't threaten them with death. They're like that. We're not gonna bow down. So how do you think the king responds to that? Like, oh yeah, that's okay. Never mind. No. King Nebuchadnezzar is angry. Verse 19. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated. Now, boys and girls, you're just watching. Obviously, you are not present, but it's pretty toasty in this room today. But I cannot even imagine walking through a fiery furnace, turning it up 7 times hotter than it already was. So he commands his mighty men to come to bind up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their clothes and all their stuff, says, and throw them into the fiery furnace. It was so hot, boys and girls, that it killed the men who threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire. It killed those mighty men. And these weren't weaklings. These were some of the strong men of Nebuchadnezzar's army. Well, Nebuchadnezzar's sitting there and he is angry. Do you see what I see? 1, 2, 3, 4. Didn't we throw in 3? But there's 4. 1, 2, 4. 4. There's 4. Why are there 4? Didn't we throw in 3? And Nebuchadnezzar is literally kind of starting to sweat it like we are right now. He's like, there's 4 in there. We cast in 3 and there's 4. Verse number 24 says, Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, okay, and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king, yes, you're right, we 3 threw in 3. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, okay, they were bound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. He's like, okay, so my men who threw them in, they're dead. These guys are now loose, they're walking around, and now we have 4 instead of 3. So he commands that they come out. Okay, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out. They do come out, and people are just marveling. They're looking at them, and they're like, how did you survive? Your clothes aren't burnt. Boys and girls, how many of you have ever been at a campfire and then you could kind of smell the smoke on yourself after you went in or in your hair? Sometimes, I like to have bonfires at my house, and then I come inside and my mom's like, you smell, because she doesn't like the smell of bonfires. But boys and girls, they didn't even smell like fire. Their hair wasn't singed. You would have had no idea that they had been thrown into the fiery furnace. God had protected them so much. So they didn't smell. Their hair wasn't singed. Their clothes were fine. People were just staring at them like, how can this be? Verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. So we got to the end of chapter 2, and Nebuchadnezzar recognizes God. We get to the end of chapter 3, and again, he's recognizing how powerful God is. I was thinking about the mercy of God in his life, that God actually gave him multiple chances to see his power. And we will still see that in the life of Nebuchadnezzar. And he promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. God is faithful, boys and girls, through all of life, whether our trials are big, whether our trials are small. But boys and girls, our faithfulness starts in small things. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were willing to not eat the king's meat, which was probably a bigger deal than we would even think it was, to the point that then they were able to be faithful when it came at the risk of their lives, of being thrown into the fiery furnace. Faithfulness starts with being faithful in small things. God wants us to be faithful no matter what. And remember, boys and girls, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel aren't living where they grew up, God is still with them wherever they are.